Welcome back. So, Exodus 36. Bezalel and Aholiab, and every skillful one to whom the Lord has given skill and understanding to know how to do any work in the construction of the sanctuary, shall work in accordance with all that the Lord has commanded. Moses then called Bezalel and Aholiab and every skillful one to whom the Lord had given skill, everyone whose heart was stirred to come to do the work. And they received from Moses all the freewill offerings that the Israelites had brought for doing the work on the sanctuary. They still kept bringing him freewill offerings every morning, so that all the artisans who were doing every sort of task on the sanctuary came, each from the task being performed, and said to Moses, "The people are bringing much more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded us to do." So Moses gave command, and word was proclaimed throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for what they had already brought was more than enough to do all the work. Construction of the tabernacle. I think that's beautiful, by the way. If only people would do that kind of thing more often towards one cause and towards each other, for each other. That'd be beautiful. Construction of the tabernacle. All those with skill among the workers made the tabernacle with 10 curtains. They were made of fine twisted linen and blue, purple, and crimson yarns with cherubim skillfully worked into them. The length of each curtain was 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains were of the same size. He joined 5 curtains to one another, and the other 5 curtains he joined to one another. He made loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain of the first set. Likewise, he made them on the edge of the outermost curtain of the second set. He made 50 loops on the one curtain, and he made 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that was in the second set. The loops were opposite one another, and he made 50 clasps of gold and joined the curtains one to the other with clasps, so that the tabernacle, excuse me, so that the tabernacle was one whole. I have a cold, and when I get to the end of a cold, it's just really mucusy, and then I just keep coughing, and then it sometimes lasts for a couple months. So I have that going on, and I have a little nasal drain. So in case you hear me doing all that, which I'm sure you have, I'm feeling good. I have my voice back. It's just this cough is lingering because all the rest of that stuff is still coming up. And he made 50 clasps of gold and joined the curtains one to the other with clasps, so that the tabernacle was one whole. He also made curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. He made 11 curtains. The length of each curtain was 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains were of the same size. He joined 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves. He made 50 loops on the edge of the outermost curtain of the one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the other connecting curtain. He made 50 clasps with bronze to join the tent together so that it might be one whole, and he made for the tent a covering of tan ram skins and an outer covering of fine leather. So I just want to say, as I'm talking about all this and reading all this, pay attention to the detail that was put into this tent of meeting, into the tabernacle, into the Ark of the Covenant, the craftsmanship, the artisanry that was put into the details, all of the details of this work. And in the rest of what we read through the Old Testament, nothing else was made like this. Nothing else was made like the tabernacle and the tent of meeting and the Ark of the Covenant and the vestments for Aaron and his sons. Nothing else was made like that. And it was just the time and attention that was put into it was second to none, that nothing else created was anything close, came close. I would even say like the stuff that King Solomon made for the house of the Lord, King Solomon made a house for the Lord. And the stuff that Solomon did for that, it was like, it was really awesome. And it was very well done, and everything was overlaid in gold and all that kind of stuff. But it did not still sound like this. It didn't sound like this did, you know? It was different. So then he made the upright frames for the tabernacle of acacia wood. 10 cubits was the length. And I think the reason why that's important to me is because uh King Solomon was able to import a lot of things and make the house of the Lord with all these things that he got from his craft, which was building these giant ships, which was incredible. You know, I thought that was so cool. But like doing something with little. This is in the very beginning before they crossed the Jordan. The craftsmanship that went into this was just different. It was a different time. This was before they requested kings. This was for the Lord, before kings came onto the scene. And I think that was really important and beautiful. Even though they were getting hammered by the Lord, because, you know, getting the mess beat out of them because they were so stiff-necked. You know what I'm saying? 10 cubits was the length of a frame, and a cubit and a half the width of each frame. Each frame had 2 pegs for fitting together. He did this for all the frames of the tabernacle. The frames for the tabernacle he made in this way: 20 frames for the south side, and he made 40 bases of silver under the 20 frames, 2 bases under the first frame for its 2 pegs, and 2 bases under the next frame for its 2 pegs. For the second side of the tabernacle on the north side, he made 20 frames, and there are 40 bases of silver, 2 bases under the first frame and 2 bases under the next frame. For the rear of the tabernacle westward, he made 6 frames. He made 2 frames for corners of the tabernacle in the rear. They were separate beneath, but joined at the top. At the first ring, he made 2 of them in this way for the 2 corners. There were 8 frames with their bases of silver, 16 bases under every frame, 2 bases. I think it was just to show the scale. It was so much that he made. He made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the tabernacle at the rear westward. He made the middle bar to pass through from end to end, halfway up the frames. And he overlaid the frames with gold and made rings of gold for them to hold the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. He made the curtain of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen with cherubim skillfully worked into it. For it, he made 4 pillars of acacia and overlaid them with gold. Their hooks were of gold, and he cast for them 4 bases of silver. He also made a screen for the entrance to the tent of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen, embroidered with needlework, and its 5 pillars with their hooks. He overlaid their capitals and their bases with gold, but their 5 bases were of bronze. Exodus 37, making the Ark of the Covenant. Bezalel made the Ark of acacia wood. It was 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. He overlaid it with pure gold inside and outside, and made a molding of gold around it. He cast for it 4 rings of gold for its 4 feet, 2 rings on its one side, 2 rings on its other side. He made poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, and put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark. He made a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half was its length, and a cubit and a half its width. He made 2 cherubim of hammered gold at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. He made them, 1 cherub at the one end and 1 cherub at the other end of one piece with the mercy seat. He made the cherubim at its 2 ends. The cherubim spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings. They faced one another. The faces of the cherubim were turned toward the mercy seat. Making the table for the bread of the presence. He also made the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide, and a cubit and a half high. He overlaid it with pure gold and made a molding of gold around it. He made around it a rim a handbreadth wide, and made a molding of gold around the rim. He cast for it 4 rings of gold and fastened the rings to the 4 corners at its 4 legs. The rings that held the poles used for carrying the table were close to the rims. He made the poles of acacia wood to carry the table and overlaid them with gold. And he made the vessels of pure gold that were to be on the table, its plates and dishes for incense, and its bowls and flagons with which to pour drink offerings. Making the lampstand. He also made the lampstand of pure gold. The base and the shaft of the lampstand were made of hammered work. Its cups, its calyxes, and its petals were of one piece with it. There were 6 branches going out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side of it, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side of it. 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals on one branch, and 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals on the other branch. So for the 6 branches going out of the lampstand. On the lampstand itself, there were 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its calyxes and petals. There was a calyx of one piece with it under the first pair of branches, a calyx of one piece with it under the next pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the last pair of branches. The calyxes and their branches were of one piece with it, the whole of it, one hammered piece of pure gold. He made its 7 lamps, and its snuffers, and its trays of pure gold. He made it in all its utensils of a talent of pure gold, making the altar of incense. He made the altar of incense of acacia wood, 1 cubit long and 1 cubit wide. It was square, it was 2 cubits high. Its horns were of one piece with it. He overlaid it with pure gold, its top and its sides all around, and its horns he made for it a molding of gold all around, and made 2 golden rings for it under its molding on 2 opposite sides of it to hold the poles with which to carry it. And he made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, making the anointing oil and the incense. He made the holy anointing oil also, and the pure fragrant incense blended as by the perfumer. Exodus 38, making the altar of burnt offering. He made the altar of burnt offering also of acacia wood. It was 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. It was square and 3 cubits high. He made horns for it on its 4 corners. Its horns were of one piece with it, and he overlaid it with bronze. He made all the utensils of the altar, the pots, the shovels, the basins, the forks, and the fire pans. All the utensils he made of bronze. He made for the altar a grating, a network of bronze under its ledge, extending halfway down. He cast 4 rings in the 4 corners of the bronze grating to hold the poles. He made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with bronze, and he put the poles through the rings on the sides of the altar to carry it with them. He made it hollow with boards. He made the basin of bronze with its stand of bronze from the mirrors of the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Making the court of the tabernacle. He made the court. For the south side of the hangings of the court were fine twisted linen, 100 cubits long. Its 20 pillars and their 20 bases were of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their bands were of silver. For the north side, there were hangings 100 cubits long. Its 20 pillars and their 20 bases were of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their bands were of silver. For the west side, there were hanging 50 cubits long with 10 pillars and 10 bases. The hooks of the pillars and their bands were of silver. And for the front to the east, 50 cubits. The hangings for one side of the gate were 15 cubits, with 3 pillars and 3 bases. And so for the other side, on each side of the gate of the court were hangings of 15 cubits with 3 pillars and 3 bases. All the hangings around the court were of fine twisted linen. The bases for the pillars were of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their bands were of silver. The overlaying of their capitals were also of silver, and all the pillars of the court were banded with silver. The screen for the entrance to the court was embroidered with needlework in blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen. It was 20 cubits long, and along the width of it, 5 cubits high, corresponding to the hangings of the court. There were 4 pillars. Their 4 bases were of bronze, their hooks of silver, and the overlaying of their capitals and their bands of silver. All the pegs for the tabernacle and for the court all around were of bronze. Materials of the tabernacle. These are the records of the tabernacle of the covenant, which were drawn up at the commandment of Moses, the work of the Levites being under the direction of Ithamar, son of the priest Aaron. Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur of the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And with him was Oholiab, son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan, engraver, designer, and embroiderer in purple, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and in fine linen. All the gold that was used for the work and all the construction of the sanctuary, the gold for the offering was 29 talents and 730 shekels, measured by the sanctuary shekel. The silver from those of the congregation who were counted was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, measured by the sanctuary shekel. A bekah head, that is, half a shekel, measured by the sanctuary shekel, for everyone who was counted in the census, from 20 years old and upward, for 603,550 men. 603,550 men, 20 years old and up. The 100 talents of silver there was a lot of them. The 100 talents of silver were for casting the bases of the sanctuary and the bases of the curtain, 100 bases for the 100 talents, a talent for a base. Of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars and overlaid their capitals and made bands for them. The bronze that was contributed was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. With it, he made the bases for the entrance of the tent of meeting, the bronze altar and the bronze grating for it, and all the utensils of the altar, the bases all around the court, and the bases of the gate of the court, all the pegs of the tabernacle, and all the pegs around the court. Exodus 39. Making the vestments for the priesthood. Of the blue, purple, and crimson yarns, they made finely worked vestments for ministering in the holy place. They made the sacred vestments for Aaron as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made the ephod of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. Gold leaf was hammered out and cut into threads to work into the blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and into the fine twisted linen and skilled design. They made for the ephod shoulder pieces joined to it at its two edges. The decorated band on it was of the same materials and workmanship of gold, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses. The onyx stones were prepared, enclosed in settings of gold filigree, and engraved like the engravings of a signet, according to the names of the sons of Israel. He set them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod to be stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made the breastpiece in skilled work like the work of the ephod, of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. It was square. The breastpiece was made double, a span in length and a span in width when doubled. They set it in 4 rows of stones. A row of carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald was the first row. And the second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and a moonstone. In the third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. In the fourth row, a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold filigree. There were 12 stones with names corresponding to the names of the sons of Israel. They were like signets, each engraved with its name for the 12 tribes. They made on the breastpiece chains of pure gold, twisted like cords, and they made 2 settings of gold filigree and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the 2 edges of the breastpiece. And they put the 2 cords of gold and the 2 rings at the edges of the breastpiece. 2 ends of the 2 cords they had attached to the 2 settings of filigree. In this way, they attached it to the front. They attached it in front to the shoulder pieces of the ephod. Then they made 2 rings of gold and put them at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, on its inside edge next to the ephod. They made 2 rings of gold and attached them in front to the lower part of the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod, at its joining above the decorated band of the ephod. They bound the breastpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord, so that it should lie on the decorated band of the ephod, and that the breastpiece should not come loose from the ephod, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He also made the robe of the ephod woven all of blue yarn, and the opening of the robe in the middle of it was like the opening in a coat of mail, with a binding around the opening so that it might not be torn. On the lower hem of the robe, they made pomegranates of blue, purple and crimson yarns and of fine twisted linen. They also made bells of pure gold and put the bells between the pomegranates on the lower hem of the robe, all around. Between the pomegranates, a bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, all around on the lower hem of the robe for ministering, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They also made the tunics, woven of fine linen, for Aaron and his sons, and the turban of fine linen, and the headdresses of fine linen, and the linen undergarments of fine twisted linen, and the sash of fine twisted linen, and of blue, purple, and crimson yarns embroidered with needlework, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made the rosette of the holy diadem of pure gold, and wrote on it an inscription like the engraving of a signet, holy to the Lord. They tied to it a blue cord to fasten it on the turban above, as the Lord had commanded Moses. The work completed. In this way, all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting was finished. The Israelites had done everything just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses, the tent and all its utensils, its hooks, its frames, its bars, its pillars and its bases, the covering of tan ram skins and the covering of fine leather, and the curtain for the screen, the Ark of the Covenant, with its poles and the mercy seat, the table with all its utensils and the bread of the presence, the pure lampstand with its lamps set on it, and all its utensils and all the oil for the light, the golden altar, the anointing oil, and the fragrant incense, and the screen for the entrance of the tent, the bronze altar and its grating of bronze, its poles and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, the hangings of the court, its pillars and its bases, and the screen for the gate of the court, its cords and its pegs, and all the utensils for the service of the tabernacle, for the tent of meeting, the finely worked vestments for ministering in the holy place, the sacred vestments for the priest Aaron, the vestments of his sons to serve as priests. The Israelites had done all of the work just as the Lord had commanded Moses. When Moses saw that they had done all the work just as the Lord had commanded, he blessed them. Exodus 40. This is our last chapter in Exodus. The tabernacle erected and its equipment installed. The Lord spoke to Moses, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle. You shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. You shall put in it the Ark of the Covenant, and you shall screen the Ark with the curtain. You shall bring in the table and arrange its settings, and you shall bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps. You shall put the golden altar for incense before the Ark of the Covenant, and set up the screen for the entrance of the tabernacle. You shall set the altar of burnt offering before the entrance of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it. You shall set up the court all around and hang up the screen for the gate of the court. Then you shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all that is in it, and consecrate it and all its furniture, so that it shall become holy. You shall also anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and consecrate the altar so that the altar shall be most holy. You shall also anoint the basin and its stand and consecrate it. Then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and shall wash them with water, and put on Aaron the sacred vestments, and you shall anoint him and consecrate him, so that he may serve me as a priest. You shall bring his sons into also, and put tunics on them. Excuse me, and anoint them as you anointed their father, that they may serve me as priests, and their anointing shall admit them to a perpetual priesthood throughout all generations to come. Moses did everything just as the Lord had commanded him. In the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was set up. Moses set up the tabernacle, he laid its bases and set up its frames, and put in its poles, and raised up its pillars, and he spread the tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent over it. As the Lord had commanded Moses, he took the covenant and put it in the ark, and put the poles on the ark, and set the mercy seat above the ark, and brought the ark into the tabernacle, and set up the curtain for screening, and screened the ark of the covenant, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle, outside the curtain, and set the bread in order on it before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle and set up the lamps before the Lord. As the Lord had commanded Moses, he put the golden altar in the tent of meeting before the curtain and offered fragrant incense on it, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He also put in place the screen for the entrance of the tabernacle. He set the altar of burnt offering at the entrance of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting and offered on it the burnt offering and the grain offering as the Lord had commanded Moses. He set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it for washing, with which Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet. Like the Muslims, they also wash hands and feet. I wonder if they did it the same way. When they went into the tent of meeting, and when they approached the altar, they washed as the Lord had commanded him. The Muslims call it wudu, and it has like a ritual to it, to how they wash. He set up the court around the tabernacle and the altar and put up the screen at the gate of the court. So Moses finished the work. The cloud and the glory. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud settled upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, the Israelites would set out on each stage of their journey. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out until the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, before the eyes of all the house of Israel at each stage of their journey. Well, that's it for Exodus. In the next video, we will start Leviticus. And as we do that, it'll probably be the same thing. So we'll do chapter 1 through 5, then 6 through 10. We'll just stay in order. For the last one, we'll do 21 through 27 and to wrap it up. So I will see you. I will see you in the next video. Bye.